Periuk api laut adalah peranti letupan bawah air yang digunakan untuk merosakkan atau memusnahkan kapal dan kapal selam. Mereka serupa dengan periuk api darat, tetapi diletakkan di dalam air dan dibiarkan menunggu sasaran untuk bersentuhan dengan mereka. Periuk api laut adalah peranti letupan yang digunakan oleh tentera untuk menyerang kapal dan kapal selam. Mereka tidak mahal, berfungsi sendiri, dan boleh digunakan dalam pelbagai cara. Periuk api laut boleh menjadi risiko kepada orang awam dan perkapalan komersial semasa konflik bersenjata. Bagaimana ranjau laut berfungsi? Periuk api laut diletupkan dengan sentuhan pada sasaran, atau dengan tanda magnetik atau akustik sasaran garis miring pergerakan dalam atau atas air. Periuk api laut boleh hanyut, ditambat dan boleh diletakkan di dasar lautan. Periuk api laut boleh digunakan untuk menyukarkan kapal musuh belayar, atau untuk menjebak mereka di laluan pelabuhan. Terdapat beberapa jenis-jenis ranjau laut. Periuk api hanyut, periuk api bertambat, periuk api dasar laut. Terdapat beberapa jenis-jenis ranjau laut. 1. Periuk api hanyut. Bergerak mengikut arus. Ia terapung di permukaan laut dan biasanya diletupkan dengan sentuhan. Konvensyen Hak 1907 mengharamkan ranjau hanyut kerana sifatnya yang tidak terkawal. 2. Periuk api bertambat. Boleh bergerak dalam had tali dan sau. Bersau di dasar laut pada kedalaman yang ditetapkan. 3. Periuk api dasar laut. Tidak akan bergerak. Berada di dasar laut dan sering digunakan di perairan cetek atau terhadap kapal selam di perairan yang lebih dalam. Periuk api diletakkan oleh kapal, kapal selam, pesawat atau kenderaan lain. Mereka boleh diletakkan dengan pelbagai cara, termasuk mini-layers, kapal yang dibina khas untuk meletakkan ranjau. Kapal yang diubah suai, kapal yang telah diubah suai untuk meletakkan ranjau. Kapal selam boleh meletakkan ranjau. Pesawat boleh menjatuhkan ranjau. Periuk api berfungsi dengan menggunakan sensor untuk mengesan sasaran, kemudian melepaskan atau mengaktifkan mina tersebut. Periuk api boleh meletup dengan menggunakan pelbagai sensor, termasuk transduser akustik, mikrofon yang mengesan bunyi, sensor tekanan, mengesan gelombang haluan dan buritan kapal, sensor seismik, mengesan getaran di dasar laut yang disebabkan oleh kapal, antena, mengesan objek logam, sensor potensi elektrik bawah air, UEP, mengesan tindakan galvanik antara logam yang berbeza, sensor fotoelektrik, mengesan cahaya. Periuk api adalah senjata yang kos-efektif yang boleh digunakan untuk menghalang akses ke kawasan pantai, melindungi pelabuhan dan mengganggu pengangkutan musuh. Mereka boleh digunakan secara ofensif atau defensif dan sukar untuk ditangkis. 1. Kos-efektif. Periuk api murah untuk diperoleh dan diselenggara serta boleh digunakan selama beratus-ratus tahun. 2. Mudah untuk disembunyikan. Periuk api adalah kecil dan boleh disembunyikan dengan mudah. 3. Pemusnah efektif. Periuk api boleh dengan cepat merosakkan atau memusnahkan kapal permukaan dan kapal selam. 4. Halangan kapal. Periuk api menghalang laluan perkapalan untuk melalui kawasan atau keluar masuk pelabuhan. 5. Boleh mencipta zon selamat. Kawasan periuk api boleh melindungi pelabuhan, laluan laut dan aset tentera laut. 6. Boleh mengalihkan kekuatan musuh. Periuk api boleh digunakan untuk memaksa kapal musuh ke kawasan tertentu.
Among the naval mine weapon type, there are various different types of mines in how they are deployed and used. These usually relate to their final positions, or in other words, where they rest in the water awaiting detonation. Mines will fall into one of three main categories: bottom, moored, or drifting. Bottom mines are those that rest on the sea floor, usually in comparatively shallow waters. These mines tend to have large negative buoyancies, they sink, which means that after they are deployed, they fall and rest on the sea floor. Moored mines are used against submarines and ships and float a set distance from the seafloor thanks to a weight and a mooring, or a tether. The mine itself is held in a case that floats, which is attached to an anchoring device that sits on the seafloor. This mine type allows for deeper water deployment as well as other specific use cases. Mines that are found on beaches that usually make the news are typically old moored mines that have broken loose of their mooring and floated to the surface. Drifting mines are those that float on the surface of the water and explode usually on contact with a ship. Due to their uncontrollable nature, these types of mines were actually outlawed at the Hague Convention of 1907. They've been sparingly used.
There is no doubt that the mine is our greatest obstacle to success. A clear path to storm the beaches. The performance of the minesweepers can only be described as magnificent. And if we manage to reach the enemy coast without becoming disorganized and suffering serious losses, we shall be fortunate.
Know that life is not fair and that you will fail often.
Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
That doesn't matter. It's will to succeed.
While you might think of naval mine technology as one of the world's past, these underwater devices are still crucial aspects of the modern naval battlefield. In order to understand this forgotten aspect of modern warfare, let's take a look back at the history of naval mines, how they work, and how they are used in the modern era. David Bushnell is known as the inventor of sea mines. During the American Revolutionary War in 1777, he set adrift what were known as floating explosive torpedoes in the Delaware River, hoping to take a British ship as a casualty. It took out a small boat floating next to the HMS Cerberus, a British frigate, killing 4 sailors. These would be the first casualty of sea mines in naval history. In the years after, mines became seen as devilish and unchivalrous in combat. For their early lives, sea mines were used sparingly, and it wasn't until the American Civil War that the world saw the first large-scale use of these explosive torpedoes. The Confederate Navy was known to be inferior to the Federal Navy during the war, so to compensate, they turned to massive mining efforts. They covered their coastline with various types of mines and inflicted heavy losses on the Federal Navy. During the Battle of Noble Bay, mines sank a total of 27 Federal vessels. During World War I, naval mines became a primary weapon against the deadly and feared German U-boats. The Allies laid what is known as the North Sea Barrage, a minefield that extended 250 miles from Scotland to Norway in 1918. In 5 months, American and British forces were able to plant 72,000 mines. The war was actually ended before the minefield was completed, but during this short time in service, it sank 6 submarines and damaged even more Axis vessels. Following the First World War and the subsequent period of peace, mines were forgotten about as effective weapons and not much development was performed in the industry. That is, until World War II. With the advancement of submarine and airplane technology, both of these crafts were developed to effectively lay sea mines. These mines had now evolved past the early stages of mine design that functioned only on contact, to be what are called influence mines. These mines were now able to actuate based on magnetic, acoustic, or pressure changes in the water to enemy ships. Mines became a highly effective and strategic weapon in World War II. One example of such was Operation Starvation. The United States carried out a massive mine-laying operation near the end of the war in the Pacific that involved laying 12,000 mines blocking Japanese shipping routes. In total, the U.S. sank 650 Japanese ships and practically halted their shipping activities. Due to mines' effectiveness as not only an active psychological deterrent, nearly all Japanese ships were forced to stay in port or heavily diverted into enemy waters. After World War II, mines fell again into the background of warfare as the world tried to scale back their militaries. Superpowers assumed that naval mines wouldn't be useful with the state of advanced warfare and nuclear bombs. They were soon proven wrong. During the Korean War, the Korean Navy only had 45 vessels, a tiny navy compared to the U.S.'s 250-ship invading fleet. Yet, nearly the entire U.S. fleet was held up for a week due to 3,000 mines laid in the North Korean waters. This got the attention of the U.S.'s Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Forrest Sherman, and the U.S. started heavily investing into mine countermeasures and advancing mining technology. Another important note is that this brief interest in mines wasn't just due to the week-long holdup, but also that 70% of U.S. naval losses were directly the result of enemy mine warfare in the Korean War. Only 2% of the U.S. Naval Service were minesweeping personnel, demonstrating a clear flaw in U.S. naval strategy. The U.S. developed the destructor class of mines in 1967. These mines contained highly sophisticated solid-state firing mechanisms that were inserted into the fuse wells of simple general-purpose bombs. This class of mines stayed in operation until the Vietnam War era, where a new family of quick-strike mines were developed. These mines were heavily sophisticated and developed for specific strategic uses. They were also incredibly cheap compared to other weapons, making them perfect for defensive action. The U.S. continued to build up their mine warfare forces in all types, involving sea and air units, ordnance disposal detachments, reconnaissance units, and minesweeping ships. To this day, naval mine operations and the skills of the community therein remain the unsung backbone of U.S. naval defensive operations across the world. Modern naval mines are both fairly simple but also incredibly complex devices. Their simplicity is due to their overall lack of components, and their complexity is the result of high intelligence programmed into them. Modern mines also have a variety of safety features that old mines never had, like the ability to be easily stored or stockpiled, and the ability to self-destruct or self-sterilize to keep wildlife and water safe after the mines are no longer needed. The makeup of a naval mine usually looks like this. It contains flight gear or handling gear, an explosive case, an arming device with an explosive train, a target detecting device, and a battery. The flight or handling gear is used to transport and deploy the mine from any one of the deployment techniques in the military's arsenal. The explosive case contains the raw explosive material contained in the mine, usually identical to the types of explosive used in bombs. The arming device and explosive train provides the initial arming of the mine after deployment. You can think of this assembly as the key that allows a mine to be detonated. When the arming device and train are properly aligned, the target detecting device can do its job and actuate the mine. The target detecting device is the most important part of any given mine. It's the one component that makes something a naval mine and not just a bomb. This device senses any number of triggers from the surrounding water, whether that be seismic, acoustic, pressure, or magnetic, and it actuates the mine on a given set of constraints. Different ships will have different signatures in any one of these categories, which allows the mine's internal technology to make informed decisions on when to activate. When all of these components are assembled together in proper functionality, you get a naval mine that can be a highly effective, intelligent weapon in the naval battle space. Among the naval mine weapon type, there are various different types of mines in how they are deployed and used. These usually relate to their final positions, or in other words, where they rest in the water awaiting detonation. Mines will fall into one of three main categories: bottom, moored, or drifting. Bottom mines are those that rest on the sea floor, usually in comparatively shallow waters. These mines tend to have large negative buoyancies. They sink, which means that after they are deployed, they fall and rest on the sea floor. Moored mines are used against submarines and ships and float a set distance from the sea floor thanks to a weight and a mooring, or a tether. The mine itself is held in a case that floats, which is attached to an anchoring device that sits on the sea floor. This mine type allows for deeper water deployment as well as other specific use cases. Mines that are found on beaches that usually make the news are typically old moored mines that have broken loose of their mooring and floated to the surface. Drifting mines are those that float on the surface of the water and explode usually on contact with a ship. Due to their uncontrollable nature, these types of mines were actually outlawed at the Hague Convention of 1947. They've been sparingly used since then. We've discussed the different functional types of mines, but each type can also be deployed in one of three ways, either by aircraft, submarine, or surface land. Aircraft-laid mines are typically designed to be offensive in nature and are suited for rapid deployment, similar to bombs. Aircraft can be used to rapidly provide minefield replenishment without having to send vulnerable ships to the front lines and put them in danger from previously laid mines. Today, aircraft are seen as an ideal mine delivery technique, as the process requires little overall risk and can be done quickly. Essentially, any aircraft that can carry and deploy bombs can also carry and deploy mines. Submarine-laid mines, like aircraft-laid mines, are typically used in offensive covert operations. These types of mines will fit in submarine torpedo tubes and can be deployed at depth. Typically, submarines can only hold a small number of mines, which makes this technique not the best suited for laying large minefields. During World War II, submarines planted a total of 576 mines that we know about, which directly resulted in the sinking of 27 ships and the damage of another 27. Surface-laid mines, or mines laid from ships, are the most economical due to the sheer volume of mines that can be transported on any given ship. However, surface-laying mines requires that the laying country has control of the waters and there's no potential imminent threats, like a previously laid minefield. This is not the case in many modern circumstances, which often leads to submarines and aircraft to be more preferred mine delivery techniques. Surface laying is typically used in defensive situations, like defending the harbors. In World War II, this was a very common practice. While there were no documented cases of these defensive minefields taking enemy casualties, there's also no documented cases of enemy vessels getting through the minefields. This underscores one of mines' most essential qualities, their ability to scare off enemies without active engagement, a psychological weapon. Understanding how mines are actuated is crucial to understanding how to protect against them and how to use them. Each type of actuation relies on sensors that are placed inside of the target detecting device, which ultimately triggers the detonation of the mine. There are four main actuation techniques that we mentioned earlier: magnetic, pressure, acoustic, and seismic. In cases of magnetic actuation, the target detecting device will contain small magnetometers, or sensors that detect magnetic fields. These magnetometers are typically 3-axis detectors, which essentially means they can pick up on magnetic fields in any direction. Every ship has a magnetic signature of some sort, which is specific to size, metal type, and even where the ship was built on Earth. As a ship passes a mine, the magnetometer picks up on the signal and converts what it senses into tiny electrical pulses. These pulses are then processed by the internal circuitry, and the target detecting device determines whether it wants to actuate or not. When the device determines that it has enough input to actuate, or rather, input to actuate, the mine is triggered. Pressure actuation sensors detect negative pressures and convert them into electrical signals. This works similarly to magnetometers, except with pressure. Like ships' magnetic signatures, each ship also has a pressure signature, which is dependent on things like size, shape, and weight. As ships move through the water, they displace a given volume of water. That changes the pressure in the water from a ship's hull, and it's dictated by something called Bernoulli's principle. After the target detecting device analyzes the pressure signature and determines that it wants to detonate on the target, it sends signals through the explosive train to finalize the actuation process. Acoustic sensors convert sound waves that travel underwater into electrical signals that the target detecting device can process. This sound comes from things like hull noise as the ship moves through the water, propeller noise from things like cavitation, and even fuel noise from inside the ship. These all create sound vibrations that travel through the water and can meet the requirements of an acoustically trained target detecting device to detonate. Seismic detectors are quite similar to acoustic sensors, and they utilize similar acoustic inputs to determine detonation. The seismic sensors sense the case movement of a mine that's the result of acoustic stimuli. These sensors are typically slightly more sensitive than acoustic sensors and can be programmed in conjunction to further refine when mines detonate. Now that we've thoroughly grasped what mines are, how they're used, and how they work, the last thing to cover is what happens when they go boom. You might think that mines just explode and punch a large hole in the side of the ship. This might be the case for surface mines of the old days, but modern mines almost always rest below the surface of the water. When a mine explodes underwater, the energy is dissipated in 3 key ways. 53% goes to a shock wave, 46% is converted to heat, and 1% is expended as light. The primary ways that mines damage ships are through the initial shock wave and the resultant gas bubble pulse. The shock wave propagates through the water and can damage or crack the hulls of ships if powerful enough. After detonation, or rapid expansion underwater of the mine, a gas bubble is created. This gas bubble expands until the pressure of the surrounding water causes it to collapse at an incredible speed. After collapsing, it expands again, collapses, and expands again, and collapses, each time losing a little bit of energy. This rapid pulsing is essentially cavitation on a massive scale, and it causes ships to break apart, snap in half, and eventually sink. This combination of effects, shockwave and bubble pulse, causes immense damage to ships and makes mines formidable opponents to even the most advanced naval warfare.
Welcome back to part 2 of the naval mines topic. In this video, we will be examining the different types of mines and how they function. If you missed the first part of this video, I recommend checking that out either now or after you watch this, as it will walk you through the historical usage of naval mines through different conflicts. If you've already seen that part, then please sit back and enjoy the rest of this video. From ancient times, mankind has yearned to master the seas both for trade and for warfare. As centuries passed, we learned and adapted our seafaring vessels to be stronger and more well-equipped to face off against anything they could encounter. From the ships of the line during the Age of Sail to modern nuclear submarines, this is Sails and Salvos. As we discussed last time, mines come in many forms. One type that can be technically considered a mine are limpet mines, which operate by being magnetically attached to a ship and triggered by a fuse. They are called limpet mines due to them being stuck onto something, just like the aquatic snail they got their name from. These mines are usually deployed by combat swimmers or small submarines and are used in covert operations as a device that can be easily attached to a target and detonated without the enemy being aware of its presence. Limpet mines have been used throughout the 20th century, most notably by Allied and Italian frogmen during World War II. Due to these devices commonly being referred to as mines and the fact that they operate by being magnetically attached to a target, it can be said that this is likely the reason that the misconception of naval mines attaching to their targets is common. The simplest and most well-known type of mine is the contact, which has been extensively used throughout history. As described earlier, these mines require a ship to make direct contact with the mine. Detonation is triggered by different mechanisms, but the most common is the reliable Hertz-Horn type. These can be set in different ways, with the most common being those that are moored in some way. This is through the usage of an anchor or a plummet, which are preset for their targets. For larger targets, the cables would be shortened so that the mine would float to a deeper depth so that they did not make contact with smaller ships. There were also some that were allowed to drift around the ocean without any form of anchoring, and these drift mines were much more dangerous due to them being able to hit any type of ship, civilian or military. While contact mines were armed with standard explosives, the but rather work to detect the reaction between metals in ships and the Earth's magnetic field. When a ship passed over one of these mines, the metal would react with the magnetic field and effectively drag the field towards it. When this happens, the mine would detect the electrical field has changed and the mechanism would trigger a detonation. Eventually, modifications would be added that would delay the detonation and only react to changes that were more sustained in order to combat minesweeping and degaussing activities. One of these modifications were known as total field magnometers and measured the total background electrical field surrounding the mine rather than just the field of a possible target so that any change would be detected. Modern magnetic mines follow these same concepts but with more advanced magnetometers and sensors. Acoustic mines, on the other hand, are those that react to specific sounds that originate from the movement of a ship. There are two types of acoustic mines, active and passive. Passive being the type first used in early World War II and relied on the usage of a hydrophone in order to trigger the mechanism. The way that these work is similar to the way a speaker functions. A thin sheet of material that flex with vibrations. This is called the diaphragm, and in the mine it would essentially do the same thing, but instead reacting to the sounds produced by the ship. The moving of the diaphragm would then cause a switch attached to it to close and send an electrical flow towards the detonator. Funnily enough, the British found that a jackhammer produced the sound necessary to detonate early German mines and would use them during minesweeping. Further development saw the ability to tune the hydrophones toward the sounds of different ship sizes, such as a battleship's deeper pitch. Modern hydrophones allow mines to be even more precise when it comes to detecting a specific sound. An active type, in contrast, is one that sends out pulses that reflect off of a ship and tell the mine how far the target is away. Pressure sensing mines are another type, but these react to the changes in pressure caused by the movement of a ship. The pressure for which it detects is created by the displacement of the water around the ship, with a larger ship causing more pressure to be generated. Often, the mine will detect the difference between the pressure of the bow and stern of a ship and detonate accordingly. The problem with these mines is that they are easily affected by waves and can often be tricked by the action of a wave on the surface that may be similar to its target. Because of issues like this, modern influence mines are designed to use all three types of sensors so that they are not prematurely triggered by minesweeping action or natural occurrences. While magnetic and other influence types of mines do not act to physically move towards a target, the Cold War saw the creation of mines that actively target ships. These are called homing mines, and they work exactly as the name implies, as they are armed with devices such as torpedoes or rockets. These are used to engage ships such as submarines, as they can be deployed at significant depths and have a greater chance of hits. One of these is the Mark 60 Captor, developed by the US, which is a torpedo placed in a capsule that allows it to be able to moor to the seafloor and wait for its target. Once one is detected, it will release the torpedo and track the ship. The history of naval mines has seen the weapon evolve from primitive boxes allowed to float on the surface to more complex machines that are able to detect aspects like the change of the Earth's magnetic field from a ship. From a weapon shunned by many Western navies, they have become a major part of naval strategy. This is due to the relative cheapness of mines, as they can be mass-produced for a low cost, but potentially eliminate highly valuable enemy targets with little to no harm to friendly forces. With this potential in mind and the continued development of more unique mine designs, it is likely that these infernal machines will remain a battlefield danger for years to come. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. A special thanks once again to Baron Von Teapot for helping out with the research and script for this video, as well as to all my channel members for helping support this content. One last reminder to check out part 1 of this video if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.
Sekian, terima kasih. Like, share dan subscribe.